I've always wanted to go to New Orleans, but I've never made the trip.
It's a good time. I mean, it's a fun city. It's unlike any place I've ever visited, and certainly unlike any place I've ever lived. So it feels like home. It feels good. It's not for
Nice.
everybody, but we
Yeah.
certainly like it.
Nice.
I would
nice.
love to go to New Orleans just to go on the haunted tours of
Yes.
what is it? The La Laurie building
Mm-hmm.
mansion.
Yeah, that one's a creepy one.
Yeah, I wanna go to visit that one.
Yeah, so houses down here are hilarious because they'll have like a real estate listing, right? And they'll be like view or pool or, 3 bedrooms or whatever, and like selling the features. And you'll see like a house, and on that little placard, it'll be like, oh, and haunted, and like it's like a feature. And then like literally the very next house next door that, is for sale will be like not haunted. And like there is definitely like a market for the one, and there's definitely a market for the other. And I've never seen that in my entire life. So
yeah, that's
it's a fun time. Come during Halloween. It's super rad.
We should do that.
We should do that. However,
we should put that on
this year.
We have far too many things to do this year.
Yeah.
Maybe next year.
Busy.
Yeah.
Oh.
Unexpectedly so. We're quite surprised about how busy we got after saying like, hey, we're kind of funny. Do you want to start a podcast?
we enjoyed each other's company and banter so much that we're just like, we should totally do this. This is like so written for us. And then we started doing it, and then it was like, holy shit. Oh, okay. All right, cool. I like
it's been great to listen to you all get going and figure out your process, and the whole time like that relationship and the ease of it has come through. So that's just been an enjoyable thing to listen to throughout. So good for you all. Congrats.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah,
that's so nice.
We're turning an awkward situation into, I don't know, or I guess like spreading it to everybody. Here's our awkwardness. You're welcome.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, welcome everybody. You are with Coming Hot into the Box. I am Carnage.
I am Slice.
And we have a very special guest today. Tell us who you are.
Hey, so my name is Liz Engler-Chiurazzi, and I'm also known on track as 5-Star Fancy.
Yes, Fancy, you reached out to us a couple of months ago, and your story is so fascinating that we thought that it would be a great thing to talk with you, and that people in Derby would love to hear your story as well.
Hope so. Sometimes you always wonder if like what you're bringing is compelling, but happy to see, and if it gets any attention, then great.
Yeah,
just hanging out with you two is fun.
Literally everything you do is amazing. Like just your long list of stuff that you do, and we're trying to write questions for you, and I was like, question number 1, do you sleep?
Such a good question. Historically not great. I
feel you.
Yeah. Learned to live on 6 hours pretty effectively. But yeah, sleep is important. I try and prioritize it. So if I can get to bed, like I'm the party pooper on my league. So when they'll like finish a bout and like it's time to go to the after party, I'm like, okay, no, I'm going to bed. Thanks.
Yeah.
Or like if practice is running a little close up to 9, I'm like, gee, look at the time. I have a nice date with a warm bed, and that's where I need to be. So, I do try and go to sleep at like a reasonable hour, but whether I stay asleep is another story. So
I feel
and then that's where some of this stuff gets done. But my most productive hours are in the early morning. So I kind of like, I've turned myself into a morning person. I like that tranquility. So does that not answer your question sufficiently?
No, it does.
I
Yeah.
just think you do so much between, you know, you run your a lab, correct?
Yes.
Right.
And you are
So
a
then,
neuroscientist, correct? Just to clarify. So Fancy is a neuroscientist.
yeah,
Yeah.
who
Yeah.
who runs their own lab, and then you have your own blog where you talk about the science, like kind of the um I'm trying to find the right word for it, like
Interaction,
the
intermingling.
the intermingling between science and derby, and then you do derby, and then your child does junior derby.
Which you
So
also
When you put it like that, it sounds like a lot.
I mean, it's a lot. It's a ton of stuff. It was like, oh my gosh, that's a lot.
on top of being a parent and a partner and a friend and all the other things. So like gold star to
Yeah.
you today.
Thanks. Well, we have a running joke in the house that hashtag Derby life happens and consumes us all. So
Have no
it's said
idea
a
what that's
little
like
bit in jest.
whatsoever.
I'm sorry, you don't know what that's like at all?
Oh yeah, I have no idea what that's like at all.
Yeah, I mean, it has a way of it, right?
It does.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
it does.
honestly, I'm kind of grateful. Like, if my small human would choose to do some other sport, I don't know how we'd fit that in. If, you know, like my spouse wasn't coming to all the bouts and things, like, and we tried to, you know, manage everything, I think it could get really complicated really fast. So it's kind of great that our lives revolve around roller derby, as it tends to happen for so many of us that start in this, you know, even if we don't realize it's going to happen.
Yeah, true, right? It kind of gets you. It's like, oh, what is this thing? Roller derby. And then it's like, not a cult. Swear to God.
Not a cult.
If we keep saying it enough, we're gonna make it true. We're not gonna. It's not a cult.
Right.
Not a cult.
So
Yeah, I would say when my league that I started with, where I worked previously, told me, oh yeah, well, you know, like, this is derby and we have practices for 2 hours 2 times a week, and you should really be doing off skates training, and, you know, you also need to be helping with like appearances and events and like all these. I'm like, I don't know if I can do this, y'all. Like, you know, getting over the stink of the loaner gear was hard enough, and then they're telling me like, yeah, it's probably like a 5 to 10 hour a week commitment, and I'm just like, like, I don't know, guys. Like, this just, it might not be for me, but here we are.
yeah.
5 years later or whatever it is.
Yeah. So tell us your derby story. Tell us where it all began.
Sure. It began in Morgantown, West Virginia, which is where we were living for my job at the time. It was about this time of year in 2018. And a friend of mine whose roommate was on the local derby team was like, we should go and we should try this out. It's a cool bucket list thing. And I was like, yeah, sure. You know, I need something to do. Why not? Like, let's try it and see how it goes. And of course, like so many people, I had no idea what to expect, and had not done my squats in advance of this. And yeah, it was you know, it was rough the first couple of practices. And, you know, my friend, you know, who I love dearly, definitely was like, okay, you know, I'm glad you're going, and I'm not going to do this anymore. And I was like, oh, okay, well, keep going and see how it pans out. And like, days turned into weeks, and then weeks turned into months, and suddenly it was, you know, boot camp exams. And, you know, at the time we still had to do 27 and 5, which is miserable. But you know, we passed that, and then, you know, we were on the team, you know. So yeah, that's sort of the story of how I got rolling. And, you know, we were a small rural community league, right? And so when I moved through the boot camp period, the very next season, it was like, well, we have 12, so you're skating. And got put into bouting fairly quickly, which I'm really grateful for. And I know that's not necessarily an experience everyone is, able to have. So that was, great in a lot of ways. I also still carry with me this like insecurity that I'm actually still a rookie, like even though I've been doing this for a while.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I am the least experienced person that's already skated like 20 bouts, so we manage, right? We figure it out.
Yeah. And I believe I read that you made Team Louisiana.
Yeah, I was very surprised. So very, very grateful. It was a super, fulfilling, enriching experience. And was not expecting that. So tried out just for funsies. And they're like, oh, you made the team. I'm like, oh.
That's
okay.
That is awesome.
I think that goes to show that you're not a rookie. You're actually really good. So
maybe I was like, I am the okayest, like what's the last, like what was the number you took? 20? Okay, the okayest number 20 on the list. Yeah.
I think I've said something very similar to that. Like, oh, I'm number 20. Yeah. That imposter syndrome is great.
Yeah.
For sure. And we face it in so many other domains of our lives, which is part of why I love, all that Derby certainly has taught and shown me, and equip me with skills where, I can deal with it when it shows up other places, namely, like a workplace or in relationships. So I think, Derby can teach us a lot about life and, whether we realize it or not.
Yeah, I agree. I read some of your blog, and I like that the comparison that of in Derby versus like in life that you have in your blog of like taking things from Derby that is a skill and like transferring it over to real life stuff. Like what was the one about failing, trying something new and failing, like can't get good unless you fail.
And you can't get lab results without failure. Failure is almost always a positive in a lot of ways if you look at it in a particular way. And I'm sure as a scientist, like you want the failures for sure to see where the path takes you.
Yeah. You have to be willing to take it. So, I'll first say like, thanks y'all. Yeah, I think you're like readership, 2 of 3 right now, with my mom being like the third person. So that is amazing. And that means a lot that you rejected out. That's grad.
I haven't looked at all of it, but I loved everything that I've read so far. And I'm like, and I think more people should check it out. So
thanks, so what's the name of your blog? Where can people find your blog?
So it's called Brains and Bruises, and it's just brainsandbruises.com, and I try and keep it updated where I can, given other commitments. Sometimes those dates might have a break in between them, but know that I am still thinking about the next post and, crafting it in 10-minute intervals here and there. So it will come eventually. But I am, I'll also preface with this is a particularly involved career phase for a scientist working at a university the way that I am. And so, like Derby, it's always there. So
right.
The blog will be there when I get back to it. The stories will come. I make new ones all the time. Sometimes for all the right reasons and sometimes for less ideal reasons, but they will eventually manifest. So stay tuned.
But I do feel like the content that you do have there is timeless because it's your story, and because I think what fascinated me, because I love the idea of like the psychology. I'm a kitchen designer. I'm an interior designer. So I am
Amazing.
fascinated by how interior spaces react to your psychology. Like, that is fascinating to me. And I can see how, as a scientist, like trying to find that parallel with the thing, like I think that you just get a different perspective that maybe you didn't think of before. And so when I was reading it, I was like, well, yeah, so I think regardless of when you write or when you're going to write again, I think that people will get a lot of information anyway. Like that's interesting. So tell us about what you do and what your premise is for relating neuroscience to Derby.
Sure. So, by training, I am a neuroscientist. My doctorate degree is in psychology, but I preface that with I cannot diagnose people. I don't see patients. It's purely from a research and theory perspective. So there's kind of those two types. And so, I think about the fundamental ways that the brain works and how that influences how we think and how we feel and how we act, within an environment, within a social group, and the like. So, the training I did in graduate school, within that context, was looking at how hormones like estrogens affect the way that our brain works. And you might be surprised to know that for a really long time, most of that work was done in male organisms, not in female organisms.
No way.
And it's a shocker, right?
No way. Who would have guessed?
Yeah. So, and there's some reasons for that. Some legitimate, others, sort of a cop out. But needless to say, it was a fairly new-ish idea to be studying how sex hormones like estrogen, affect the brain in a female organism. And so when I started graduate school, we were trying to interrogate these things, and looking at different types of hormones, because that was just what the field did, was only looked at the one, but that's not really the hormone that women would be taking, when they took a hormone-based medication. So I was interested in menopausal hormone therapies, but there's other ones out there like birth control that, also needed to be considered. So we were busy. And then, from there we, do 5 or 6 years of a PhD, and that's, in the neuroscientist field, not quite enough to be considered an expert. So you got to go to do more training. And so that's where, after doing my training with Heather Bamonte Nelson, a very accomplished neuroscientist in Arizona State University, I moved to West Virginia to work with Jim Simpkins, who's, sort of one of the first people to make some pretty important discoveries in that field. And that's where I got started in Derby. So from there, did some work in that area as well, looking at continuing on brain aging and how hormones affect it, but also starting to learn how the immune system affects the brain. And so that's where my research has moved in recent years. Unfortunately, the reason for that is that we just all had to live through a global pandemic. And so
Right.
interrogating these things has become really important. And so it's definitely kept us busy. And, we hope to clarify some of the ways that sickness, infection, the immune response affect our brains, because even that was until recently not well understood, but it's becoming more important that we investigate that. So that's what I'm doing now.
Wow.
So is it are you trying to investigate like long term of what happens to your brain, or like short term, like while you're sick, what happens to your brain?
Yeah. So Sort of both. I would say a lot of work has been done on what happens to your brain when you're sick. I mean, we all somewhat inherently understand this, right? When you catch a cold, you become socially withdrawn, you feel apathetic and tired and grumpy, and you engage in this like sort of constellation of behavior we call sickness behavior. um and it looks a lot like just sort of being like depressed, if you think about it. And we don't think as well, so if you try to ask a sick person to do a bunch of math problems or remember complex information, they would not be at their peak performance. And to some extent, that's been pretty well explored, because those experiments are much easier to do, right?
Yeah.
It's doing those long-term experiments that take a lot of time and resources. And so we're starting to do a lot of those now, again, especially in light of what we've all just lived through. So my interest is more so in the long-term consequences that these types of experiences might have.
Yeah. Yeah, like especially with things like long COVID becoming, like a thing that people are or have experienced and are experiencing, like what that, I mean, it has something has to have fundamentally happened to your brain to make that a thing, like, and I mean, I am no scientist. I'd like to think I'm educated enough to like understand things, but certainly no scientist. But yeah, that's really fascinating. Really is.
Thanks. It keeps me busy.
I mean, it
bet.
makes sense. It does make sense that like if you get sick, it's not just your brain has to get sick too. Like it can't be like everywhere on your body minus your brain. Like that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Right. Well, you hit on a really interesting conundrum, right? Because the field for a long time thought exactly the way that you thought. So the brain is somewhat separate from the rest of the body, and there's only a few places where the brain is, able to sort of detect what's going on in circulation. And so people actually thought that they said the brain is immune privileged. It does not really concern itself with what's going on outside of it. And so it seems weird to think that for a long time we thought that, but it's true. It's true. And I would say for a long time, like up until the mid 2010s is about when we started to identify exactly how the brain might engage with the rest of the body when it comes to the immune system. So yeah, I'm with you. I was like, psychologists have been saying for years that like the brain and the immune system are affected. Look at the stress response and finals time, and how every single one of our undergrads has a flu like the week after the semester ends. Like the brain and the immune system are definitely engaging in a complex relationship that we don't understand. But it was really a fairly recent series of discoveries that allowed us to really fundamentally understand the hows and whys this was affecting. But we're still still revealing more and more.
Well,
That's just like to me that's surprising because it's just like you would think as like a common sense type deal that like why would people think that your brain is immune? That it's like
right.
that's silly to me, but I'm not a scientist.
Sure. I mean, part of it is that our neurons are finicky. They're temperamental. They're kind of divas. They really need like a very specific set of conditions to work well. And if you mess that up for even a couple of seconds, they start freaking out, and they'll send a bunch of signals that don't make any sense, and the rest of the brain doesn't know what to do with that, and then the body doesn't know what to do with that. And so it makes sense that we have to biologically like protect our neurons because they're very special. And Yet, they need to know what's going on with the rest of the body in order to orchestrate all the things that we do and how to respond appropriately to all our experiences. So I see where it comes from, but I'm also with you that it doesn't always make a lot of sense, and just sometimes we lack the tools at the time to appropriately explain something.
Yeah.
And
Right.
it takes a while for the tools to assemble themselves to be able to ask the questions scientifically that we want to ask.
Mm.
So tell me how you feel like your work that you do has influenced your derby career. How did you make those parallels?
Um, I think that at first, when I set out to do this blog, I had in my mind that I was going to use the blog and the parallels in the science is hard, and we've done this hard thing almost to like recruit people into the derby community who were scientists, because I'm like, well, if you could do this hard thing of like earning your PhD, like you can learn how to skate, and like you can challenge yourself, and you spend all this time over here getting out of your comfort zone, like come over here and get out of your comfort zone over here. But what it's sort of morphed into is almost the opposite, and I'm actually more excited about that direction, where in showing that, hey, we've all in the derby community done this hard thing, right? Some of us had zero skating experience when we showed up on day one. Some of us hadn't been on skates, right? Slice, yeah. Like some of us hadn't been on skates for decades, like, and yet we did it. And here we are doing this thing that is really challenging and enriching and rewarding. And we overcame that because most of us didn't have that skill set.
Right.
And most of us don't go into being a scientist with the skill set necessary to be a scientist. It has to be learned. And it's a bumpy road and it's a hard road. And there were a lot of tears and struggles and challenges and failures along my journey for sure. But the idea that I'm starting to really experience with this is, we can do this. And this community in particular, I think, stands well poised to take on this other challenge of becoming a scientist, which so few people choose to do, especially people who identify as women, especially from marginalized communities.
Yeah.
And we have a good proportion of those. So that's sort of where I think this blog may go in the next few years. But I'm also open to suggestions because I want it to be what people want it.
Yeah. We get that, because that's kind of how we look at our podcast too. It's like we just want everybody to weigh in on their experiences and what they do, because I feel like from a science perspective, and you mentioned resilience, and people who play derby and who stick with it, are super resilient people. And that's not to say obviously that other people aren't. We all know that, but like, I don't know, you got to be a special kind of breed to do this wacky thing that we do. And anytime I meet, like, actually one of Grandpa Barry from past episodes that we've mentioned is a scientist. They are getting their PhD in what, chemistry. They're getting their
Chemistry, not the squishy kind.
That's
what I was
they
told.
say. Yeah.
I love it.
The
I love to chat with them.
We can make that happen, and
That's right.
I would love to be in the same room. I probably won't know any words being said, but I would love to get you guys both in the same room to talk, because that would probably be an amazing conversation.
Yeah, it would. And actually, when I first started playing derby, I played for Hartford, and several people on my team were PhD candidates at UConn,
Oh,
at the
cool.
University of Connecticut. So I do think that there is this like vein of people that run through Derby that's like, could be pushed towards science or are in the sciences or STEM, or, you know, several people in our league are engineers.
Engineers.
I love that.
Yeah. There's a lot of engineers. And as a designer, there's this thing between designers and engineers. We're fun together as a group.
I love it. Yeah. And I mean, I think you hit on an important point, right? So many of us who carry with us some of these intersectional identities that aren't well reflected in STEM, you know, we're never encouraged necessarily that like this was the field for them. And I think it's really a shame because there's a lot of smart people in this world, and they've just never had the you know, realization or the encouragement to pursue things that really challenge their comfort, I think intellectually. And I think it's really a shame for the field because it's meant that we have a group of a lot of the same, you know, making the experiments and figuring out the questions that they want to ask. And that means that a lot of issues facing communities that aren't well represented there just don't get considered. So, you know, for all the reasons, like encouraging people who wouldn't necessarily otherwise have had the opportunity to pursue this career trajectory is really important. And it's something that we are growing in our appreciation for the need to invest in. So part of this blog really is to try and draw from the Derby community. Anyone who didn't think they were smart enough for a PhD program, you know, I didn't think I was smart enough. You know, look at me now, right? And like, that's just one example. But if those words can be helpful to somebody, you know, it's worth the effort for sure. Recruiting the next generation of scientists is or STEMinists really is the thing to do.
Yeah. I mean, even granted, I'm aging fast. Like all of a sudden I'm 43 and I'm like, oh my God, I'm fucking 43. Anyway, but like
you are 40 adjacent.
I am
40 adjacent.
I'd like to say that I'm in my late, early 40s. For the whole year. But I went to a Catholic grammar school, and that affected how I learned science in a big way. Like my teacher in 7th grade almost got fired because she answered a kid's question about evolution.
Wow.
Right? Like she almost lost her job because we had a conversation about evolution, which is scientifically like it is the theory of evolution, but a lot of the puzzle is all pieced together.
Right.
But you know, I think that in some situations, like kids just don't have that opportunity. Like I never thought that a field in science or technology was a thing for me. Like that was a boy job.
Sure.
And that's sad. And granted, that was 30 years ago or 35 years ago. But still.
It's still going on now, though. And it's just like in small little ways where, you know, the divide between, you know, still that divide between girl jobs and boy jobs are still there. Like it's not as predominant, like it's not like as in your face, but it's still like there's older people who hold on to those thoughts. Like when I was a kid, my grandfather wouldn't let me fly his plane simulator on his computer because that wasn't for girls. You know, it was just like, you know, like there's still like older people and like, you know, even people like one generation up from us that are still hold on to the idea where it's like, you know, girls are female identifying or in minority should go one direction, and then men identifying should go another. And a lot of it is outside of the science and STEM fields. Like, as a person who is a designer who works in a draftsman field, where I work, it's like men all around me. Like, there's very little of us. The only positive is when I go to the bathroom, it's empty and it's great. So.
But isn't it so nice, right, to have a safe, supportive derby community to retreat to?
Yeah. But a lot of people on our team are designers and engineers, or
scientists,
in some way or another, scientists.
Yeah.
So I agree with you. I think derby is a great place to recruit for the next generation of scientists, especially with junior derby.
That's right.
Get them while they're young, and while you're involved in junior derby, hey, what are you thinking about when you go to college?
Yeah.
And you're already there.
That's one of the questions that I had, because I believe you said that you coach your child's league.
Yes. Yeah. They are the Crescent City Crushers. I'll back up and say we moved to New Orleans when my daughter was 7 in 2020, and not just at the beginning of 2020, in full pandemic 2020. She, we had a lot of alone time, in a new city with no friends and pandemic. So we have, we are no shortage of, flat spaces out here. So we got to, teaching her how to roller skate, which was really helpful in the start of that journey. But yes, I don't know how I really got involved coaching her, because our first couple of months when she was doing the derby team from Zoom, we were kind of butting heads over it, and there was a weird high level of pressure that we both somehow weirdly felt over it all. And I'm glad that we're through that and learned how to work together, as coach and skater versus mom and daughter, because we didn't get started out I think as well as maybe I would have liked, but now we're super tight, and she's such a badass. And it also helps that she has moved up a level, so I am not her direct coach anymore. But yeah, it takes a special pair for a parent to effectively coach their own kid.
Yeah.
So do you do level 1?
Yep, I do. I call them my leg hangers. So I have the ones that cannot skate and literally hang off my hips while we work our way onto the track.
I love it.
So the
so
brand newbies.
Oh,
I love watching level 1 derby. It is the cutest freaking thing on the planet, and they're just a little, and they can't hit each other.
They're so tiny.
They're so tiny. I love them so much.
Committed. They are, they are right there, and they will not stop. Even if they lose the jammer, they're just there, and they're ready, and they might be sort of looking off what's going on, but the second they need to re-engage, they're intense. I love it. I love it. Level 1 is hilarious.
Yeah.
They're so cute. That's what my my child is now. We just started. Last week was his very first practice.
How'd that go?
It went amazing. They did laps for 5 minutes straight, and I'm pretty sure it's the only time I've ever seen him stick with something for 5 minutes. So. And I'm pretty sure his lap time was about the same as mine when I first started doing it. So I was like, yeah, good job, buddy. But he did great, and he loved it, and he can't wait to go back. And he made instant friends from our experience going up there and interviewing Nuri's Uprising, we already knew a couple of people. So Sweeney, if you recall from one of the episodes, or multiple episodes where we have talked about Sweeney, but he introduced himself right when we got there. He was like, "Hey, Slice," and I was like, "This is Little Slice," and he's like, "Oh my god."
That's awesome. That's
so
great.
It was really nice that he made like instant friends with a couple of people just based off of that connection. So I was like, this podcast has given me nothing but positivity out there in the world.
But
that's awesome.
That is something
Yeah.
that we have really become very passionate about Junior Derby, just because we feel it's such a good outlet for kids that aren't your typical jock kids or your sporty kids. And I do think of that like psychologically and neurologically, like those kids that would maybe like half a generation ago been kind of lost now have a place, and how that's affected them in such a positive way, like inside and out. That's why like it's become such a big deal for me, like I officially purchased my background check so that I can be a Junior Derby referee.
Awesome.
I have to do other like concussion training and things like that too, but like I'm on my way. I started it today, and I was
I'm so proud of you.
Good for you. Yay. Yeah, you're gonna love it. You're gonna love it.
I've helped out Northeast reffing, and just I will say with the kids, especially when you get up into level 2 and 3, they are crazy. they don't care. They just go for it every time, and it's like, don't call off the jam. Why would I call off the jam?
Yeah.
That's silly.
No, I'm having far too much fun to call off this jam. It's the look in their eye.
Yeah, I've seen level, like that level of skater, like they'll be just, come off the track from a jam just bawling, like they're just so exhausted. And like you set them down and you're like, are you okay? Did anything happen? And they're like, no, I'm good. And then it's time to go out again, and they're like, I'm out. Like, and you're like, okay. Like, good luck,
They don't get tired.
Super fierce. No.
Yeah. Yeah, I love Junior Roller Derby. It is the best thing ever, and I can't wait to do more with Junior Roller Derby. And I want everybody to get their kids involved in Junior Derby. Like, get the next level.
That's absolutely true.
Of kids going.
Like, I think what I love a lot about it is, it creates a space for, I think, Carnage, as you said, sort of the kids that typically get lost in the shuffle. And it's great to see kids at all age levels, right, that play in Derby, right? So you got your 17-year-olds and you've got your 7-year-olds, who are just putting on skates for the first time, or your 17-year-old that's about to age out, right? And they're sitting together like after a practice, chit-chatting and interacting. And I don't know very many examples where an age range that broad can converge in the same space and be on the same team. So that's been, to me, a really fulfilling thing to see transpire, for sure. And I think, Slice, it's only a matter of time. I'm sure you are going to be sucked into this team and like in a, mentoring and coaching capacity, I'm sure. But it's like super enriching, right? To share
I'm
this.
keeping my head low. I'm keeping my head low. I literally am trying so hard not to get involved. Like, I just want to be a cheerleader. That's gonna probably change so soon, and I know it's
gonna happen.
I know it's gonna happen, but I'm just trying to keep my head low and not get so involved and just be a cheerleader. But
Love it. Love it. I'll
So-
share my coaching plans, when you
Thank you.
inevitably
when it eventually happens, because we all know it's going to happen, because that is just what I do. Like, I will be reaching out and asking for coaching.
I got
Oh,
you. I got
boy.
you.
But they have amazing coaches. They have enough coaches over there to where they have like multiple people in 2 separate areas, like teaching travel, and then they have like the lower levels, like on the non-travel team, and that's where my son was. But
That's awesome.
it's such an ADHD friendly sport, is like what I realized at this practice, because it's like you don't have to be like, you only have to be super focused for like 2 minutes. And then you get a break, and then you get super focused again, and it's like, oh, this is the ADHD dream. And that's when it clicked for me that this really is a really good idea for my kid.
Yeah.
So
Sure. Well, I, as a person with ADHD who, struggled with it before it was cool, right? I was diagnosed like before even the wave of kids that got diagnosed. I totally agree. I think the sport is great for people who are good with divided attention, but can also hyper focus and also keep track of lots of things. So for, us neurodivergent folks unite, like it's a good environment, I think, for a lot of people that are shouldering, some mental health challenges, and it's destigmatizing, which is an important thing to advocate for.
Absolutely.
I mean, I think a friend of mine who's a coach on the red stick roller derby, I think, put it really well, that this junior stuff, that she coaches for there, this is some of the most important stuff that we're doing right now in the derby community.
Yeah.
Yes, we were coming back from COVID. Yes, that's all. But like bringing up juniors is the investment in the future that we all need to be really prioritizing. So I'm super glad your child is doing this, and I'm super glad that you will be doing this very soon.
And we've already started committing to the junior roller derby team up there, because I already went up there to help officiate, and Carnage, like she said, has already been doing roughing. So we're 100% on board with junior roller derby just needs to happen for everybody, and we're just going to keep pushing it, and we're just going to keep singing that song until everybody's like, shut up, and we'll be like, no, we will not shut up.
You shut
Can you imagine one day there'll be the soccer mom trope, and then there'll be the derby mom trope, and what great contrast that will be.
Seriously,
I can't wait for the meme.
I know,
right? I can't wait for that to be so normal to where it becomes derby mom. Oh, you're a derby mom now?
Yeah.
Got your van for all your derby gear.
So, Fancy, are you still currently skating?
Yeah, I skate on the Big Easy roller derby.
Okay.
So that's a fairly regular thing, as the schedule permits and all that. But yes, still on their league.
Excellent.
And it was amazing moving in the pandemic, right? Because I left my last league, and we hadn't seen each other in 6 months, and so it was like I didn't even know when I left West Virginia if derby would recover. But in moving during that time, it was so great to reach out to the team, even though nothing was really happening, and just be like, hey, I'm, transferring, if that's still a thing, in 6 months, but I'm moving here, I don't know anybody, perhaps if people would be comfortable, we can do a group, social distance meet up in an outdoor space, at some point in the future. And after about a year, we were able to make that happen. And so it was helpful to uproot one's life, but also know you have a community that you can come into. And throughout that time we were meeting on Zoom, and that was really, meaningful too. So, yeah, still
I
skating.
think that is kind of cool. It's pretty cool where you're able to people who are involved in roller derby where they can pick up and move and be like have instant friends somewhere else because you just got to find a roller derby community.
I don't know other sports that are like that. I mean, I imagine that there have to be, but it's been great knowing that is a thing. There's always a couch you can surf. There is always a practice you can drop in on, no matter where you're traveling, which I think is amazing.
Yeah,
I agree.
It is. It is really great.
So how is the season looking for Big Easy?
Good question. We're working to finalize the game schedule. It's a little bit different here than I was used to in Morgantown. We were linked up with the university there as a roller derby team, and so we had our season for the academic year that was pretty much the same. But here we have Mardi Gras, which we are right at the beginning of right now, and that is where we do a lot of our recruitment and our publicity and skate in parades, which is really rad. So we don't have a whole lot of games just yet, but we'll have those, I think, beginning March and out till about October. Unfortunately, that does mean that we're skating through the thick of our very humid summers here, which is interesting an interesting way to lose a lot of water weight every day.
I hope you have air conditioning.
No air conditioning. No. Like all derby warehouses, it is a roof. And so it gets hot. But we're working on formalizing that schedule. I think our big thing looking forward as a state, roller derby community is the Y'all Stars tournament that Team Louisiana is going to be hosting at the middle to end of February, and then we'll get to turn our attention towards our own skating schedules.
Yeah, we had toyed with signing up or putting our names in the hat to announce part of the Y'all Stars, but which is we talked about it. We're like, oh, that'd be so amazing to do, but we don't have all this money just to travel.
I feel that.
Yeah, because I was like, did you see who's going to Y'all Stars? Did you see Y'all Stars? And then of course Carnage was like, we cannot go to Y'all Stars.
Unless somebody wants to fly us to Y'all Stars.
Yeah, if somebody would love to sponsor us to go to Y'all Stars, I will totally go.
Okay, well, 888.
Yes.
Are you listening?
Let's 888, you listening? We'll go.
Maybe
we'll do things.
Well, if you want to come to New Orleans, it's a great way to do it. Come for Mardi Gras, even better. Maybe in another year or two.
Yeah,
maybe it'll be here.
Yes,
you guys put on Y'all Stars every year, or does that travel?
It started last year, so I think it's still being figured out, what it's going to be in the long run. But I think it was extraordinarily successful, the first year when I was on the team, the state team. And, massive credit to the main organizer, Carmina, who, did a truckload of work to lift that from the ground. So when they sort of said, hey, Team Louisiana, we're going to put on a tournament, I was just like, okay, but I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know how to do this. So I hope that somebody does. And luckily she was the person. So she's helming it again. And I think for now it'll probably be every year, but we'll see what the future holds.
Nice. I had a question too, and I lost it. And it was something
again. This happens every time.
I know. it's
gone.
like right. It's
gone.
it's like right
It's-
there.
Don't
but
even.
It's not there.
Just let it go. Just let it
Okay,
go.
let it
It's
go.
fine.
Let it go.
It's fine.
Let it go.
We'll blame it. We will blame it on the fact that you are not feeling well, and it's your brain that is sick.
Yes,
Right?
this is what it is. This is what
We've
it
come
is.
full circle.
See that? It's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing. Oh, that's what it was. I remember now. Sorry, got very excited. Obviously. So your derby name is 5-Star Fancy. Can you tell us about that? How you came to that derby name?
Sure. So I have always liked the finer things in life. Even when I was a college student with very little financial resources. If I could put a mint on my pillow, like I would, and I definitely like vibe with the design side of things that you are mentioning and that perspective, because I've always like appreciated like a nice space that's like decorated and fancy restaurants and nice, I don't know, I always had a thing for shoes during a phase, so I always kind of like the fancy things. And somebody once told me, well, Liz, like you're not just everyday fancy, you're like 5-star fancy, when they found out that I have a habit of seeking out truffles, like the real truffles, the mushroom
truffles,
things from below the and like I shouldn't probably admit this out loud, but I have definitely like brought them when I travel internationally for work. I'll bring them in a suitcase, stealthily obscured, maybe without disclosing that. I really love my truffles. And so when this friend like found out about that, she was like, oh, you're not just regular fancy, like you are 5-star fancy. And I'm like, that's it. Like, that's the name right there. That's it.
That's tracks.
You know what?
Carnage, that should have been your name.
There's nothing wrong with being a bougie bitch, right, Slice? There's nothing wrong with that.
I think you two are like soulmates right now.
Happy to be in this club. This is amazing.
I am not in this club.
I am part of the club. I will be president of the club. I admit it. I do. I too like the finer things, and I am not ashamed. I will not be ashamed.
There, live your truth. Live your truth. That being said, you can have a mint on your pillow in the Ritz, or you can have a mint on your pillow in the middle of the woods camping, and it's still fancy. So,
yes, absolutely.
Fancy comes in all forms.
It does. It really does. It really does.
The next time we travel together, I'm putting a mint on your pillow.
You better.
I'll do it just for you.
Deserve it.
I'm sure I did deserve it. Well, thank you so much, Fancy, for being on our show today. I've loved talking to you, and I would love to just spend hours talking to you about like more of the sciencey parts of things, because it fascinates me. But maybe when we come down to the Big Easy, we'll have to do that.
Or maybe we'll do another episode and we'll have Barry on.
Oh my God, you would love Barry. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Open to all of those things. And yeah, you always have a place to crash. If you ever need to come down here, you will be welcome, and we can have lots and lots of fun conversations. But yeah, anytime, please. Do not hesitate.
Oh, thank you so much. This has been such a pleasure.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me. And I mean, can I ask you a question?
Oh, please.
So,
yes.
Yeah, where do you see you are taking this podcast? Like, what is your future, and what are your goals, and what are you seeing in the next? I always ask my trainees this too. I'm like, what's your short range goal, and your mid range goal, and your long range goal? But like, What are you looking to accomplish? I am just so fascinated to see like where this goes.
We are too, I think that's safe for me to say.
Yeah.
Not that either of us are very religious, but it's almost the kind of like God take the wheel situation. It's like Derby take the wheel. Like this is where we're like, yeah, it's pretty crazy. I would think the short-term goal is that we are working on a Pride Cup tournament, our short track roller derby tournament. So that is short-term goals for at least because we're hoping to hold that in July, maybe August, but that's the goal. So because we want to spread the love and the knowledge of Derby, because I think a lot of people feel like Derby's not for them, but they just think of it as this hard-hitting, like crazy thing. But you could do so many other things in Derby. You could volunteer, you could NSO, you could announce, but also introducing people to things like short track Derby, where it is less intense, like a pickup game of Derby. Like, so that I think are short term, but I'll have Slice weigh in on other things too.
I think I guess for me the ultimate goal is to get out as many Derby stories as possible from as many people as we can talk to, and not just like the known names. I want to talk to people who nobody knows about. I want to hear everybody's story, because just from the short amount of time that we've had this podcast, like I've come to learn that every single person has an extraordinary story. So like long-term goal is to make sure that happens, is that to make sure to get everybody's story out there, and also be so popular that we can get press passes wherever we go.
I like it. I like it.
Not what I was expecting. No, I agree with that. We should.
You should. You deserve that too.
But
I want to be able to go
popular. Like, I think you're that popular. It's just a matter of convincing the powers that be that the press cast needs to come.
Like, God, I mean, like my dream would be to be on like Jimmy Fallon. Like, hey guys, here's the face of roller derby. You should check out Coming Hot in the Box, because you'll learn all the cool things about roller derby. And we're on Jimmy Fallon.
Amazing.
And singing some like karaoke song.
You can sing the karaoke.
It.
I'll put the spotlight on you.
Well,
that'll be great.
Well, you know what happens when you put a spotlight on me. Something happens.
I know exactly what happens when a spotlight goes on you and a microphone goes in your hand.
It's true, and I can't help it. It's like it's in me. But yeah, I think that, you know, ultimately, like Slice said, sharing everybody's story and just making it accessible, making Derby accessible for anybody who wants to learn about it. And, you know, I've told so many people about our podcast that have nothing to do with Derby. I'm like, no, well, you should listen to this episode and that'll explain what this is. Or, you know, because we've done a history episode, we've done episodes on Derby wives, and, you know, I think it's such a fascinating subculture to me. And I think and it blows my mind that more people aren't into the sport of roller derby.
They're missing out.
Yeah.
So we're trying to bring it to the masses.
Well, tis the season. It is recruitment season.
It is.
So time to spread the good word.
Have you heard about our Lord and Savior, roller derby?
Come be part of our not cult.
Come be part of our not cult. Not a cult.
Not a cult.
And for all of those of you out there looking to purchase some sweet Coming Hot in the Box merch that says "Not a Cult Roller Derby," check us out on our website. Not a plug.
We do.
Totally a
It
plug.
was 100% a plug. It's totally a plug.
I plug us all the time.
I know.
Like even during practices that I run, I'll be like, and if you listen to our episode, you'll learn all about it. Oh, anyway. Well, thank you again. I appreciate. Do you have any other questions?
I know, I think that's great, and I want to be respectful of your time too. So I know families and things to do after work remain. So I just really enjoyed this, and I hope there are more opportunities for us to connect.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, I absolutely hope so too. This has been great.
Yeah, this has been great. Well, thank you everybody for listening. Thank you 5-Star Fancy for being on with us today. I am Carnage.
And I am Slice.
Bye.
Bye.
Hey, Mom, did you listen to my podcast?
What's a podcast?